There is a particular dark just before dawn when the world holds its breath, and I spent the worst night of my life standing in it, screaming a warning at a man who had crossed 3 borders to drag me home, and did not yet know I had run to keep him alive. I had my hands fisted in the front of his shirt. There were armed men coming up out of the tree line on both sides of the hollow, men who had been waiting for exactly this, for the king to be far from his own walls, exhausted, undefended, his whole guard worn thin by a chase I had set running. His wolf was in his eyes, and his fury was on me, and he was saying my name like an accusation, and I was trying to make him understand, in the few seconds we had left, the thing I had given up everything to prevent. "I did not run from you," I told him, with the first arrow already in the air. "I ran because they are going to kill you, and the only way I could stop it was to be gone. Hadrian, behind you." It started the night before my own claiming, when I stood in the dark outside a council room and heard 2 men decide to murder the king I was meant to belong to. My name is Brynn, and the night before I was to be claimed by the Alpha King, I was the most envied woman in 3 territories, and I was about to throw all of it into a river. I should explain the claiming, because everything turns on it. I was low-born, stillroom worker of the Iron Territories. No rank, no bloodline, anyone would chart, and by every law of pack arithmetic, I should have lived and died unnoticed. Instead, 6 months before, the Alpha King had done the unaccountable thing. Hadrian, of the Iron Territories, the wolf, the whole North feared, had chosen me. Not a noble's daughter, not an alliance bride. Me. He had announced it to his court with the flat finality of a man stating a fact, and he had said it was a matter of suitability, and no one believed him, and neither did I. I want to be clear about my own agency in this because it matters to all that follows. I was not seized. The claiming carries the old protections. A bond cannot be forced. A chosen woman may refuse, and if she refuses, the king is left with nothing but his wounded pride. He had given me 6 months to refuse. I had not refused. I had stood in his cold court being looked at as an upstart and a mystery, and I had not run, because somewhere in those 6 months of watching the most contained man alive fail, in small ways, to be contained around me. A sentence he could not finish, a cup set down wrong. The way his wolf surfaced to the edge of his eyes when I came into a room, I had let myself begin to hope that the matter of suitability was a lie. He was telling his court, and that underneath it was a thing he could not say. I was 24, a woman grown, and on the eve of the ceremony, I was happier and more frightened than I had ever been. And then I went to fetch a sleeping draught from the still room near the council wing, and I heard my own happiness end through a door left carelessly ajar. There were 2 voices. One I knew at once, Grayward, the king's war chief, the second most powerful wolf in the territories, a cold, competent man Hadrian trusted with his armies and his life. The other was a stranger, with the flat accent of the Scarn pack across the western border, the Iron Territories' oldest rivals. "The ceremony is the moment," Grayward was saying. "There is no other. An alpha, at the height of a claiming, has his whole wolf turned inward, bound up in the bond, in the woman, blind and deaf, to everything outside it for the space of the rite. He will never be more powerful, and never more undefended in the same breath. Strike then, and even Hadrian goes down." "And the blame?" the Scarn voice asked. "The girl's pack, her people. A low-born nobody raised up overnight to stand beside a king who would not believe her kin had sold her into reach of him as a knife. You move when the rite begins, the king dies in the arms of the bride. I take the field as war chief to avenge him, the territories rally to me, and we ride west into the Scarn under a banner of grief. And you open the gates from the inside, as agreed a pause. By midsummer the Iron Throne is mine, and the Scarn lands are yours." And it began with a kitchen girl who was too flattered to ask why a king would stoop so far. I stood in the dark with a jar of valerian going cold in my hands, and I understood several things at once, and not one of them was the thing I had hoped to understand that night. I understood that I was to be the occasion of Hadrian's murder. I understood that my own people would be slaughtered for it. I understood that Greyward, who would be standing at the king's shoulder during the rite, as was his right, had the access and the army and the patience to make every part of it work. And I understood, with a cold that went all the way to the floor, that I had no proof, that I was a low-born stillroom girl with a story, and Greyward was the war chief of the Iron Territories. And if I walked into Hadrian's chambers that night and accused his most trusted wolf of treason, why, the kindest thing that would happen to me was that no one would believe me, and the likeliest thing was that Greyward would hear of it and simply move his plan a day sooner. There was only one piece on the board I controlled: me. No bride, no ceremony, no kill window. I vanished. If the claiming was called off, not delayed but broken, the bride fled and gone, then Greyward's perfect moment evaporated, and the king would be left standing, guarded, alive, in his own hall, with his armies around him, where no war chief could touch him. It would cost me everything. The whole North would call me a coward who lost her nerve and ran from the honor of a king. Hadrian would believe I had rejected him. My own small hope would die in the telling. He would live, though. That was the whole of the sum, and I did it in the dark in about the time it takes to set down a jar, the way I have always made the choices that cost the most. I would disappear. I would leave nothing behind. No note, no trail. Nothing that could be read as accusation, and warn Greyward, I knew. I would simply be gone, a runaway bride, a girl who could not bear to be claimed, and I would carry the real reason out of the territories in my own chest where no one could pull it loose, and the king would be furious and humiliated and safe. I took one thing with me when I went: the claiming cord, the length of braided silver and leather I was to be bound with at the rite that had been left in my rooms wrapped in linen. I do not fully know why I took it. I told myself it was so the ceremony could not simply proceed with another cord, which was a lie. The truth is that it was the only thing in the world that was meant to join me to him, and I could not make myself leave it behind, and I have wondered ever since whether some part of me took it as a promise I did not have the courage to say out loud, that if there were any way back to him that did not end in his death, I meant to take it. I went out a stillroom window into the dark, 4 hours before my own claiming, and I ran. I ran west and then north, the wrong direction, away from everywhere a fleeing bride would sensibly go, because I had laid out enough dead in my life to know how a hunt thinks. I went to ground in a far, cold holding on the edge of the Greywater Pack's land, 3 borders from home, where an old healer named Tilda took in a half-frozen stranger with no questions, because that is what the old healers do, and I became a woman with no name who was good with herbs, and I waited for the world to forget me. The world did not forget me. The world, it turned out, had come apart the moment I climbed out that window. The news reached even Tilda's cold corner of the moors within the week, because news like this travels faster than any rider. The bride of the Iron King had vanished the night before her claiming, and the Iron King had gone to war over it. Not a quiet search. Not a matter dealt with by sending out riders and letting a runaway go. Hadrian of the Iron Territories had crossed his own western border within a day into the Marsh Pack's land, and turned their holdings inside out looking for me. When the Marsh Pack protested the violation, he crossed their northern line too, into Greywater, and did the same. 3 packs in 9 days, borders that had held in uneasy peace for a generation, crossed by a king who told every alpha who challenged him the same flat thing: it is a matter of honor. A bride pledged to the Iron Throne has fled it. I will have her back. And any pack sheltering her shelters an insult to the Iron Territories, and may answer for it a matter of honor. I heard it repeated by a peddler at Tilda's door, and I laughed, which frightened the peddler, because there was no humor in it. Of course he called it honor. A king does not tear 3 packs apart for a feeling. He tears them apart for an insult, for his wounded pride, for the affront of a kitchen girl who dared run from the hand he had lowered to her. I had broken his face in front of the whole North, and the Iron King was crossing borders to drag the runaway back and make an example of her. and I had known he would be furious, and here was the fury, exactly the size I had feared. That is what I told myself. I told myself the cold king wanted his property and his dignity, and I lay awake on Tilda's floor with the claiming cord under my head where I had hidden it, and I told myself I had done the right thing, and I tried very hard not to think about a sentence he had once failed to finish in the library, or the way his wolf came to the surface of his eyes when I walked into a room. I had misread him. I want you to understand that I misread him completely, because it is the engine of everything, and because being wrong about him in exactly this way is the most important thing I ever did. If you have stayed with me this far, if you want to know why a king who could have let a low-born bride vanish instead crossed 3 borders to find her, and what his beta knew that his court did not, and how the girl who ran to save his life nearly got him killed by running, then stay close. Because the night his hunt finally reached Tilda's cold holding was the night I learned I had been wrong about every single thing, and the night I stopped running and turned around to fight. The cord is still under my head. We are nearly to the part where I have to use it. It was Tilda who told me the part I had not heard, 3 weeks into my hiding, and it was the first crack in the story I had built to keep myself sane. A rider had come through, she said, one of the Iron King's own, dropped lame and feverish at a holding a day east, tended and talking the way fevered men talk, and the man had said a thing that did not fit a matter of honor at all. He had said the king did not sleep, that in 3 weeks of crossing borders Hadrian of the Iron Territories had not rested, would not rest, that his wolf would not let him stop, that the most contained man in the north had come undone by degrees with every day I was gone, and that his beta, a steady wolf named Garrick, who had served him since boyhood, had stopped pretending it was honor and started telling the war council the truth to their faces. His beta said it plain, the rider claimed. Tilda watched me over her herbs as she said it, because Tilda was no fool and had worked out long since who her nameless stranger was. Said the king could call it honor till the snow came, but a man does not stop sleeping over a bruised pride. Said his wolf chose that girl 6 months ago, and has been telling him so ever since, and that the king has been arguing with his own wolf the whole time, and losing, and that her running was simply the wolf, winning the argument out loud where the whole north could watch. The old woman set down her pestle. That is not a king hunting an insult, child. That is a man who cannot breathe with you. Gone and has not got the words for it, so he calls it the only thing his pride will let him call it. Honor. She held my eyes. You ran from the wrong story. You have been hiding 3 weeks from a thing that was never coming to punish you. I sat very still on Tilda's floor. I had built my whole sacrifice on a foundation, and the foundation was this: that Hadrian did not truly want me, that the claiming was politics and suitability, and a king's whim, that he would be angry to lose me but not wounded, that I could vanish, and he would rage and recover and live, untouched behind his walls. I had told myself the matter of suitability was a lie. He told his court. I had never once let myself believe it all the way to its end, that it was a lie he was also telling himself, and that underneath it was the same thing his beta had finally said out loud, that his wolf had chosen me, that I was not a whim he would forget, that I had run from a man who wanted me so badly his own body had betrayed it to his entire war council, and he had crossed 3 borders not to punish a runaway, but because he could not stop. And I understood, in the same cold instant, the catastrophe I had made. I had thought a vanished bride made the king safe. I had been thinking, like a stillroom girl, of ceremonies and kill windows and walls. I had not been thinking like Greyward. Because Greyward had a king who would not stay behind his walls, a king tearing across 3 borders with a small, worn escort, sleepless and reckless and undefended, further from his own army every single day. I had not closed the kill window. I had carried it out of the stronghold and dragged it across the moors behind me, and I had hung it over Hadrian's head on every open road between his walls and wherever I was hiding. And Greyward, who was surely riding with that very escort as the loyal war chief helping his grief-mad king's search, Greyward would not need a ceremony anymore. He would only need the king to be tired and alone and far from help in some cold hollow at the edge of nowhere, the way he would be the moment he found me. I got up off Tilda's floor. I had spent 3 weeks being a woman with no name, hiding, enduring, certain I had done the one thing that would save him. That woman was gone between one breath and the next. I took the claiming cord out from where I had hidden it, and I wound it around my wrist where I could feel it, and the thing that came up in me, in place of the fear, was cold and clear and had a single shape. I had run to save his life, and I had nearly killed him doing it. I was not going to hide one more hour. I was going to find the king's hunt before it found a quiet place to die, and I was going to walk into the middle of it, and I was going to make Greyward's plan come apart in the open, where there were witnesses, even if I had to use myself as the bait to do it. "You are going toward it," Tilda said. Not a question. "I am going to end it," I said, and I heard my own voice come out level and certain in a way the runaway bride could never have managed. I made him a target by leaving. The only way to unmake it is to stop being hidden and start being loud. Where did the rider say the hunt had reached? I did not have to find the hunt. The hunt found me first, which I should have expected, because I had stopped covering my trail the moment I decided to be found, and because a king whose wolf has not rested in 3 weeks closes distance fast once the scent is true. They came at dusk to the cold hollow. Below Tilda's holding, a small party rode worn, far too few for a king so far from home, exactly as I had feared. I went down to meet them in the open, with the cord on my wrist, and my heart going like a hunted thing, and I saw him before he saw me. Hadrian of the Iron Territories looked like a man 3 weeks into losing an argument with himself. The iron was still there, the contained, terrible stillness, but it was worn thin as old cloth, and underneath it was something raw I had never let myself believe in. And riding at his shoulder, steady and competent and patient, his hand resting easy near his blade, the loyal war chief helping his king search the cold edges of the north, was Greyward. The king saw me. Everything in him stopped. For a moment neither of us moved. 3 weeks of crossing borders, 3 packs torn apart. And he sat his horse and looked at me, across a darkening hollow as though he did not trust the sight, as though I might be one more cold place that turned out to be empty. And then he was off the horse and crossing the ground toward me, and his wolf was in his eyes, and the first thing out of him after 3 weeks and 3 borders was not a king's words at all. "You ran." It came out wrecked. "You ran from me. I gave you 6 months to refuse, and you waited until the night before to climb out a window like I was a thing to escape. Do you know what I have torn apart to?" His jaw worked. The fury and the relief were at war in him and losing to each other. "Why? Tell me why, and do not tell me you are afraid of me, because I will not." "Because Greyward is going to kill you," I said. I said it loud. I said it straight at the war chief, across the hollow, so that the king's whole escort heard it, so that it could not be unsaid. And I watched Greyward's easy hand go still on his blade, and I watched the calculation move behind his eyes, and I knew, in that breath, that I had been right, because an innocent man's face does not do what Greyward's face did. "The night before the ceremony I heard you," I said to him, walking toward the king now, putting myself between Hadrian and his war chief without quite knowing I was doing it. "You and a Scarn man in the council wing." The rite was the kill window, an alpha bound, up in a claiming blind and deaf for the space of the bond, never more powerful and never more undefended. "You meant to strike during the ceremony and blame my people and ride west under a banner of grief. So I broke the ceremony. I vanished, so there would be no rite for you to strike in." My voice cracked and held. "And I was a fool, because I forgot you did not need a ceremony. You only needed him tired and alone and far from his walls. You needed exactly this. I did not save him by running. I delivered him to you on every open road in the north, and you have ridden at his shoulder for 3 weeks waiting for him to find the quiet place I was hiding in, so that you could do here what you could not do in his hall. The hollow had gone silent. The king was looking at me, and then at Grey Ward, and I watched 3 weeks of grief and fury in him resolve, terribly fast, into something else. "Garrick warned me," Hadrian said very quietly to his war chief, "to bring more men. I told him I did not need them. I told him I only wanted to find her." His wolf was full to the surface now. "You agreed with me, Greyward, every time. You counseled the small party. You counseled the open road. You—" And Greyward, his cover spent, his patience at an end, did the only thing a cornered traitor can do. He gave the signal. And now we are back where I began. In the dark before dawn, with my hands fisted in the king's shirt, and armed men coming up out of the tree line on both sides of the hollow. Greyward had not ridden 3 weeks at his king's shoulder without arranging for the end of it. The Scarn had crossed the border in the night, a war band, waiting in the trees for the war chief's signal. Here at the edge of the world, where a king could die with no witness, who mattered, and a loyal, grieving Greyward could carry the tale home, however he chose. The first arrow was already in the air when I turned and saw them, and I did the only thing there was time to do, which was to put my body into the king and drive us both down and sideways as the shaft went through the space his throat had been. Behind you, I got out, Hadrian behind. What followed I cannot give you cleanly, because it did not happen cleanly. A king with his wolf at the surface and his mate under fire is not a thing the world has a clean shape for. Hadrian's worn, sleepless, 3 weeks, undone control came off all at once, and the wolf came up, and he put himself over me and between me and the tree line, and met the Scarn war band as it came down into the hollow, and his small escort, Garrick at the front of them, who had warned him, who had never stopped knowing, closed around their king in the dark. But Greyward was not coming for the king. Greyward was clever, to the last. He understood that the surest way to break Hadrian was not a blade in the king, but a blade in me. The wolf turned inward and blind exactly as he had always planned, only the rite traded for a hollow and a hunt. He came for me through the chaos with his sword drawn, the war chief of the Iron Territories, to finish the kitchen girl who had unraveled everything. I had the claiming cord on my wrist. I have laid out the dead my whole life, and I know how a body moves, and I know how a thing that means to kill you closes the last distance, and when Greyward came I did not run, because I was done running for good. I let him come, and I caught his sword arm the way I had caught a murderer's knife in another life I had not yet lived, and I wound the silver and leather length of my own claiming cord around his wrist and the blade, and I held the war chief's strength with a stillroom girl's hands for one breath. Pour two, and the edge of the blade bit deep into my forearm through the cord, and the blood ran black in the dark, and I did not let go, because 2 paces behind me was the man I had given up everything to keep alive, and he needed 1 breath, and I bought it with my arm. 1 breath was enough. It was always going to be enough. For him. The king reached us, and the war chief who had planned a murder around a wedding died in the cold hollow with the wedding cord tangled around his sword hand, and the Scarn war band, leaderless and exposed on the wrong side of 3 borders, with a king's wolf among them, broke and ran into the dark, and were hunted down before the sun came up. Then it was only the 2 of us in the gray light, and I was on my knees holding my own arm together, with the bloodied cord, and Hadrian came back up out of the wolf by degrees, and found me there, and his face did the thing it had been failing to do for 6 months and 3 weeks, and stopped failing. "You ran," he said again, much later, in Tilda's holding, while the old woman stitched my arm and pretended not to listen, "to save my life. You climbed out a window the night before I was to claim you, and let the whole North call you a coward, and hid 3 borders away in the cold, because you heard my own war chief plan my murder, and you could think of no other way to stop it than to take yourself off the board." His voice was not steady. The Iron King's voice, not steady. "And you took the claiming cord." "I told myself it was so they could not use another," I said. "That was a lie. I took it because it was the only thing that was meant to bind me to you, and I could not leave it behind even when I was leaving you to think I had rejected you. I took it as a promise I did not have the courage to say. I watched till the tie off the last stitch. I was wrong about you. I built the whole of it on believing you did not truly want me, that the claiming was politics, that you would rage and recover. I never let myself believe your wolf had chosen me, because if I believed that, I could not have made myself run, and I had to be able to run, because it was the only way to keep you breathing. I made myself meet his eyes. Your beta was right. You called it honor, because your pride had no other word. I called it suitability, for the same reason 3 borders away. On this woman's floor, we are a matched pair of cowards, my lord, and I am done being one. And here is the thing about the reluctant king, the thing I had watched him fight for 6 months and 3 weeks and through a war chief's treason. He could deny his wolf for a very long time, but he could not deny it forever, and when it finally won the argument, it won all at once. I have never been able to finish a sentence near you, he said. 6 months. I told my court it was suitability. I told my beta it was a matter of state. I told myself every single day that the most powerful wolf in the north did not lose his composure over a stillroom girl, and every single day my wolf called me a liar, and the night you vanished, it stopped letting me sleep. And I crossed 3 borders telling every alpha who stopped me that it was honor, because I could not make my mouth say the true thing even to strangers. You reached out, careful of my bound arm, and took the bloodied claiming cord from where it lay between us. I am going to say the true thing now, and then I am never going to call it anything else again. I did not tear 3 packs apart for my honor. I tore them apart because my wolf knew what you were the moment he saw you, and I have spent half a year in a war and very nearly my life catching up to him. You ran to keep me alive. Yes. Let me spend the rest of mine being worth it. I will not give you the kiss, because it was not built for telling, and because the truest thing about it was not the kiss, but what came open in him when it ended. Half a year of iron coming off a man all at once, the argument finally over, the wolf and the king at last wanting the same thing out loud. He pressed his forehead to mine, and I felt the whole contained weight of him let go, and I held still inside it, the one steady point, until it settled. The unmade Greyward's plot, thread by thread, in the weeks that followed. The Skarnautha, who had bargained for the Iron Throne from the inside, a cold opportunist named Draken, found his border-crossing warband dead on the wrong side of the line and his treason laid bare by their own captured men, and the Iron Territories rode west, not under a banner of grief as Greyward had dreamed, but under the truth, with the king alive at the head of it, and the Skarn paid for the bargain they had made. The 3 packs whose borders Hadrian had torn through were given the whole of the story, and an accounting, and a king's reparation, and an enemy they had not known was at their backs, and what could have been 3 new wars became in the end 3 new alliances. Because nothing binds packs together like a treason, all of them were meant to bleed for, and his beta, Garrick, the steady wolf, who had told the war council the truth to their faces while his king called it honor, was made war chief in the dead traitor's place, which is the only part of the whole affair that surprised no one. I keep the cord, the claiming cord, I took out a window the night before my own wedding, that I carried 3 borders into the cold, that I wound around a war chief's sword arm and held until the blade cut to the bone. It is stained dark now, and it will never come clean, and when we were finally claimed for true, in his hall in the open, before the whole court that had spent 6 months calling me an upstart and 3 weeks calling me a coward, I would not let them bring a fresh one. I was bound to the Iron King with the same cord I had run away with, the blood and all, because I wanted every soul in that hall to understand that this was not a thing he took from me, and not a thing I fled, but a thing we had both very nearly died choosing, and chosen anyway. It is 6 months on now, and the king of the Iron Territory sleeps. I mention it because there was a season when he did not, when his wolf would not let him rest for grief, and the whole north heard of it. And I will never entirely forgive myself for the 3 weeks I cost him, even knowing why I did it. He sleeps now. He sleeps like a man who has finally stopped arguing with himself, and some nights I lie awake and watch him do it. The most feared wolf in the territory's gone soft and unguarded in the dark, and I think about the girl on Tilda's cold floor with the cord under her head, certain she had saved him by leaving, and so certain she was unwanted. And I wish I could reach back and tell her the one thing she got wrong. He never thought you were nothing. He could not finish a sentence near you. That was never a man you needed to run from. That was a man who was always eventually going to cross every border there was to find you. He still cannot quite manage me. The iron still fails in small ways where I am concerned. A word he reaches for and loses the whole composure of a lifetime coming undone at his own high table over something dry. I have said while his court watches and has long since given up knowing where to look. He has stopped fighting it. The last time it happened, he simply set down his cup. Wrong, the way he always sets it down wrong when I have got under the iron. And he looked at me down the length of the table and said to the whole hall, "She ran 3 borders to keep me alive and let you all call her a coward for it. You will mind your faces." And the court minded their faces, and under the table, where no one could see, the Iron King took my scarred hand in his and held it a heartbeat longer than any matter of honor could explain. So tell me something before you go, because I have turned it over on more than one quiet night, and I cannot quite settle it. When I climbed out that window the night before my claiming, was it the bravest thing I ever did, or the most foolish, or both at once? I was so certain I was saving him, and I so nearly killed him instead. And I do not know to this day whether a wiser woman would have gone to him with what she heard and trusted him to believe her, or whether trusting him would have only moved the knife a day sooner. Tell me what you would have done. And if you want to know what happened the winter a rider came east from the broken scarn, with Greyward's own sealed letters, and a name in them I knew, a name from my own pack, someone who had helped him from the very beginning, then comment, "The cord," and stay close, and I will tell you. But that is a story for another night, for tonight the fire is warm, the cord hangs where I can see it, and the King of the Iron Territories is asleep, at last with his hands still holding mine.